Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping on our tool belts and wading into what might be the definitive masterclass on efficiency and scale. IKEA. We're not just looking at the furniture. We are really dissecting the business model that has, fundamentally shaped how millions of people furnish their homes.
That's so right. When you look through the sources we've compiled, IKEA just emerges as this textbook case study.
Right.
It's a company that has managed to maintain this durable competitive advantage since it was founded in Sweden, back in 1943?
A long time.
A very long time. And it's all done by mastering cost leadership and completely redesigning the entire global furniture value chain.
Cost leadership is one of those phrases that gets thrown around a lot. But how do our sources really define true cost leadership? And why does IKEA fit that definition so uniquely?
Yeah, that's the key question. True cost leadership isn't just about, surviving on razor-thin margins.
It's more than that.
So much more. It means being the absolute lowest cost producer in your market, serving a broad customer base, and doing it sustainably, without the quality just collapsing to zero.
Okay.
For IKEA, this meant they had to rethink every single stage, from the moment a product is conceptualized to the moment it leaves the customer's car. They built the cost savings into the structure itself.
Right, not just squeezing suppliers for a lower price here and there.
Exactly. It wasn't haphazard, it was systemic.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I think we have to start with the concept that is most visceral for every single customer. The flat pack.
The flat pack.
This is the innovation that really defines the company's entire logistical operation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The flat pack innovation is maybe the most genius piece of strategic reconfiguration in modern retail. It wasn't just a clever idea.
No.
It allowed IKEA to shed enormous costs that were just, tied up in traditional furniture logistics. Think about how a normal sofa or a fully assembled wardrobe travel.
You're mostly just transporting air.
You're transporting air, exactly.
And that transporting air problem is where the flat pack saves just staggering amounts of money, right? The sources suggest it completely redefines container capacity.
It radically changes the economics of shipping. When you ship fully assembled furniture, you might only use 50, maybe 60% of a container's volume.
Because of all the awkward shapes and empty spaces?
Precisely. The flat pack design lets IKEA pack products densely, uniformly. They often get to 90% or more container utilization.
Wow.
And that instantly cuts your freight costs per unit by a huge, huge margin.
So we're not talking about marginal savings. These are exponential.
They are. And beyond transport, what about storage?
Right, the warehouses.
The efficiency just carries right through. These compact, standardized boxes are so much easier to stack, to store, to manage.
Both at the huge central warehouses and in the actual retail store.
Yes. This drastically cuts the square footage you need for warehousing, and it allows for much higher turnover. We tend to focus on the self-assembly part.
Of course, that's the part we do.
But the real magic is the logistics chain it unlocks before it ever gets to you.
And this brings us right back to the customer's role in this whole operational genius. We accept the inconvenience of self-service and self-assembly because of that price point. We are essentially providing that final bit of labor, the assembly, for free.
Exactly. IKEA achieves this huge cost reduction by strategically shifting part of the value chain.
Final assembly delivery.
Right, to the customer. You, the consumer, are trading your time and your labor for affordability. You're completing the manufacturing process at home.
And the savings they generate from shipping and storage get passed back to you in that low price.
It's a beautifully balanced price-value trade-off. It's one that very few competitors can actually replicate.
It makes so much sense that the flat pack revolutionizes the back-end logistics delivery. But this idea that cost efficiency is baked in from the very beginning in the design studio, that's much more subtle.
It is.
How do they move past the flat pack idea and make sure that cost isn't added back in by, say, an ambitious product designer?
This is where operations management meets product design, and it's arguably the most critical step. IKEA employs what they call cost killers.
Cost killers.
Yeah. They don't design a beautiful product and then ask, okay, how cheaply can we build this?
They start at the other end.
They start with the target price and they ask, what is the best product we can possibly design for this specific, extremely low price point?
So the price dictates the product, not the other way around. That must create, I imagine, some incredible tension between the creative teams and the engineering teams.
It does. But designers and engineers there work in lockstep with procurement specialists. They aren't just thinking about aesthetics. They are constantly evaluating material usage.
Like using particle board instead of solid wood.
Exactly. Think about the common use of particle board or that honeycomb paper structure and wood veneer over solid lumber. This isn't a coincidence.
No.
It's a calculated decision to use less raw, expensive material while still maintaining, enough structural integrity for the expected lifespan of the product.
Can you give us a concrete example of this standardization at work? Because I have to assume they aren't using 1,000 different types of screws and fasteners across their massive inventory.
That is the absolute core of their design discipline. The sources highlight this obsession with standardized components.
Okay.
Take, for instance, the cam lock system, or those small standard metal brackets. They use the same limited set of fasteners, hinges, and component sizes across thousands of different products.
So if a designer comes up with a new table that needs a brand new custom-made bracket,
That design is probably going to be rejected, or at least the designer will be sent back to adapt the design to use an existing mass-produced component.
and that level of standardization is what lets them achieve those incredible economies of scale, even before the furniture itself is built.
Precisely. They're buying hardware by the literal ton.
I can only imagine.
When you're ordering 5 million of the exact same cam lock every year, your unit cost is minuscule. This tight coordination ensures low unit costs are just. They're built into the product's DNA.
Which maximizes operational efficiency and ensures that high sales volumes translate directly into maximum profitability.
Exactly.
So thinking globally about every last screw and panel, that brings us to the next massive challenge, managing the sheer scale of the operation.
The global machinery.
Right. You
Yeah.
can't be a cost leader if your supply chain is inefficient or, limited to high-cost regions.
And IKEA runs one of the most sophisticated, globally integrated supply chains in the world. They leverage low-cost manufacturing regions, across Asia, Eastern Europe, and beyond.
But it's important to stress this isn't just about finding the cheapest factory out there.
No, not at all. It's about strategic partnerships.
Right. I imagine securing long-term supply at guaranteed low prices requires a different approach than just playing factories off against each other every few months.
It demands stability. The sources really stress that IKEA views these long-term supplier relationships as a critical strategic asset.
Oh.
By committing to high-volume contracts, often for years at a time, the suppliers are guaranteed that throughput, that operational security.
And in exchange,
In exchange, IKEA secures superior, consistent pricing and ensures a steady flow of materials. And that's crucial when you're selling something like the Billy bookcase.
which has sold tens of millions of units globally. It's the perfect example of their reliance on global standardization.
Absolutely. That ties directly into those massive economies of scale you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of IKEA's core product lines, the best sellers, are globally standardized. A Malm dresser in London is, for all intents and purposes, identical to one in Los Angeles.
So their factories are just optimized to produce massive, consistent volumes of the same few designs.
Which drives their material purchase costs down exponentially.
I always found the term glocalisation really useful here, because while the core is standardized, they must adapt some things for local needs, right?
They do, but those are kind of the necessary exceptions that prove the rule.
Like what?
For example, some kitchen cabinet sizes or bed dimensions might be adapted to regional standards, metric versus imperial. Or maybe they'll adjust a color palette for certain regional tastes.
But the bones of it are the same.
Exactly. The structural components, the fasteners, the basic material inputs, those remain globally uniform. The massive savings from standardization basically pay for the slight necessary local adaptations.
And financially, it's just a high-volume, low-margin game. Their whole financial strategy just hinges on moving enormous quantities of product.
While maintaining extremely tight inventory control and strong cash flow, it's a lesson in throughput optimization.
So they're profitable not because they make a ton of money on one item.
But because they sell millions of items incredibly efficiently. Their logistical brilliance means they minimize the time inventory sits in a warehouse, constantly turning that capital over.
Which is absolutely essential when your margins are that slim.
It is.
So, after mastering this entire chain, from design to delivery, what does this all mean for their standing in what is a very competitive global furniture market? Does this truly give them a durable competitive advantage?
It absolutely does. I mean, IKEA's combination of scale, their supply chain lock-in, and decades of focused cost leadership, it all creates these exceptionally high barriers to entry.
A new competitor can't just show up and match them.
No. They can't simply appear and match that pricing structure or their supplier relationships or their logistical network overnight. They would have to invest billions just to get close.
Billions to get close to the volume needed for that unit cost efficiency.
Exactly. And the advantage extends right into the retail experience itself.
Which is interesting because they spend less on aggressive, external advertising and more on making the store a brand experience.
The store is a strategic asset. You aren't just walking into a warehouse. You're entering this highly controlled psychological landscape.
The famous maze.
The maze. IKEA stores are designed as experience destinations. They're laid out as a mandatory path that guides you through these fully furnished showrooms.
The sources call that first section the decompression zone, right? To get you out of your, I just parked my car mode and into a, this could be my home mindset.
Precisely. They're guiding you past inspiration, showing you rooms where their products function harmoniously. This is a masterclass in suggestive selling.
So by the time you finally reach the warehouse section,
You have a much larger idea of what you need, or, more importantly, what you think you need.
which encourages impulse buying.
A lot of it.
And that's how you go in for a new desk and you walk out with a set of curtains, a new lamp, and yes, the obligatory package of Swedish meatballs.
I've done it myself.
I have personally fallen victim to the impulse buy section right before the checkout countless times.
That's the design working perfectly. The whole system is engineered to extend the customer's time in the store and maximize the average basket size.
And the meatballs are part of that.
The meatballs, the low-cost items, they're all strategically placed to keep the overall experience positive and maximize that final purchase value.
Wow.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the customer is actively participating in the revenue optimization process,
Yeah.
just like they participate in the cost reduction process through self-assembly.
That really is the essential strategic lesson here. Cost leadership is powerful, but it's only truly powerful when it is fundamentally built into the product design, the supply chain, the operations, and even into the customer's own behavior.
It's a systemic advantage, not just a pricing strategy. It's a true competitive moat.
A very deep one.
However, even IKEA faces constant strategic risks. Rising global raw material costs erode those margins.
And what about online competition?
Huge competition from pure-play online furniture retailers who eliminate the need for that costly, sprawling physical store experience entirely.
And the sustainability pressure.
And of course, the mounting pressure for corporate social responsibility and environmental sustainability.
Right. So if your core business strategy relies on consuming enormous quantities of newly sourced materials, how do you continue to innovate the value chain in response to these critical sustainability pressures? This is where the old model really meets the new economy.
Well, they're strategically adapting. IKEA is investing heavily in e-commerce optimization. They're shifting towards smaller, urban store formats that can better serve dense city populations. And critically, they're embracing circular economy initiatives. This includes exploring modular designs for easier repair and reuse and launching global furniture buyback schemes.
Which challenges you, the listener, to consider this. When IKEA implements a furniture buyback scheme, taking back used products that are decades old, how does that action, which sounds expensive on the surface, actually continue their core tradition of redesigning the value chain to capture cost savings and maintain their competitive advantage in the 21st century?
Yeah, think about the material recapture, the control they get over the resale market, and of course, the profound customer loyalty that's generated by making furniture a renewable asset.